Hey, Earthlings, welcome to another Still Alive. This week it's me and Ronnie's stomach, by the looks of it. Oh,
Yeah, I was just fixing my light. My light fell off. It's very
all right,
precariously
okay.
balanced.
So, are you feeling well, Ronnie?
Yeah, feeling fine, absolutely. Especially as I've got my cup of tea now.
Ah, well, that's the main thing. And are you still alive?
I, I certainly think so. If I get my
Okay,
mic
well,
right.
in that case, we'll get on with it then. Yeah, so welcome everyone. Ronnie's in his actual place now, which is
Yeah,
very good.
I've
So
managed to sort myself out.
you sort yourself out. So
Yeah,
now we've got a packed program, and this is our news show, really. So there's actually we've been difficult keeping up with it this week, Ronnie. 'Cause there's been so much, but so it would probably engender quite a lot of comments. So do feel free to comment away as you do. And of course, the usual rider, which is we don't charge anybody to have their stuff on the screen. So don't worry about that should you be panicking, which I'm sure you're not. I always say that line, and I always think, I bet nobody's worried about it. But there you go. Okay. Now, so we're going to start off with blood sports, Ronnie, and you wanted to you wanted to kind of give a bit of credit and a bit of a shout out to the Hunt Saboteurs, didn't you?
yes, because this year the first news item actually we're covering it. It's actually something from the Hunt Sabs website. But it's important to remember this is the 60th anniversary of the Hunt Saboteurs. Hunt Saboteurs was formed in Brixham in Devon in 1963. That's 60 years ago this year, and I think the first action they took was against a hunt on Boxing Day that year. So it's kind of the winter of '63. Hunt Subs were formed, and we're coming very close to that time now. So obviously, congratulations on them for still keeping going after all these years. And of course, both of us.
They shouldn't have to be though, really, should they?
They
But
shouldn't have to be.
yeah.
No, well, they shouldn't have had to. You know, had to do stuff in the first place, should they? But
No, that is true.
but
Well,
no, and I think people probably thought that when the Hunting Act was passed or was going to be passed, here in here in the UK back in the early 2000s, wasn't it? That maybe that was the
2005
kind of hang up their sabbing boots, but sadly that's not the case. It's, the hunting's largely continued the same as before, and the subs have been out there, trying to save the foxes and other hunted animals. But both of us back in the day were involved with SABs, weren't we?
We were. There you are. 2002, it's saying here.
Yes, yeah.
And it's got the mention of 60 at the top there. So yeah, 60 years. No, you were involved pretty early, weren't you? On really?
Well, I was involved in 72. What happened? I kind of went vegan in kind of early spring of 72, I think. And it wasn't long after that I saw a news item on the telly about the Hunt Sabs. And I thought, right, I've got to get involved. I've got to get involved with these people. I was like raring to. I found out about all these things that happened to other animals, and I was raring to kind of get involved in stopping all of it. You see, so I got involved in the Hunt Sabs, and I started off sabbing with my nearest group, and then I formed a group of my own where I actually lived. And I was involved with a number of years with them for a number of years. I was actually on their committee for a while.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. And you knew Dave Wetton and all the
Yeah,
founders.
Dave. Yeah, I knew Dave right in the. I think Dave was the chair of the Hunt Sabs.
Yeah.
When I first met
So,
him.
I mean, what we're covering in terms of this is something that's going on in Scotland, right? And so,
Yes.
in a sense, there's a whole kind of history of. I mean, I always remember that I used to make a distinction between the Hunt Saboteurs used to have a sweatshirt and a t-shirt, and it used to say, "For fuck's sake, stop hunting," and
Yes.
the league used to have, "For fuck's sake, ban hunting," right?
Yes.
And that was one of the first things that gave me a clue about the difference between kind of direct action and political campaigning, this kind of stuff.
I mean, absolutely, and hunt subs only exist because hunting isn't properly banned, and because the kind of really weak ban on hunting we kind of have in the UK isn't anywhere near properly enforced.
Yeah, well, the first thing he said in this one, this is the Sabs. In the first paragraph, they're talking about the loopholes, and so, of course, we're back to that terrible situation that if you get a speciesist legislature, I can never say that word, bringing about legislation about animal use, it's going to be full of loopholes because it's species that have brought it into being.
Oh yes, I mean it still involves animal use, and of course there are thousands of dogs used in hunting, of course, and their victims too. Thousands of those are killed every year by the hunts.
Yeah, the ones who are not good enough and all this kind of stuff.
Ones that aren't suitable. Young dogs that aren't suitable for hunting, and then older ones that slow down. They're probably about 6 years old or something, and they become slower.
And then
so
you got the horses situation, not
the
to mention
horses as well.
what
happens to them when they get older, and the whole thing is just total oppression of other animals in various ways.
Well, I lost count of the number of horses I saw bleeding from the mouth at the end of the hunts.
Yeah, absolutely. They're jumping over all sorts of obstacles.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing is appalling.
Well, I think as a general matter, Ronnie, I don't think anybody will contradict me by me saying that this last week has shown that we are living in a very violent world, and hunting is just a manifestation of that. And in fact,
yes,
in terms of some of the hunters, I mean, they're the most violent people I've ever known. The terrier men, for example, people go coursing in particular. They've been really incredibly violent people.
Oh yes, that's absolutely true.
And so we've got a situation then that the hunt ban comes in, which kind of ended up not really being a functioning ban too much. And so now, at least in Scotland, we've got a situation where they're trying to iron out some what they call loopholes. But it's interesting because you showed me a document that I'd never seen before, which is this one.
Yes,
onto the screen so people can see it.
Yeah, this is from the League Against Cruel Sports website, and it actually points out the differences between drag hunting and trail hunting, because kind of what happened when the Hunting Act in the UK in 2002 outlawed the use of a pack of dogs to pursue to pursue another animal. Then the hunt got round that by making out that they weren't actually chasing a live animal, they were chasing a trail, and they'd have somebody lay a trail or purport to lay a trail. And of course, this goes on now. So they could still go out in the countryside with their pack of hounds, the same as they always did. And of course, because the law wasn't and isn't, properly enforced, they are able to very quickly switch.
You know what this reminds me of, Ronnie?
Yeah.
This reminds me of enriched battery cages, because it's kind of like during all the debates and everything, we only ever talked about drag hunting. I mean, trail hunting, according to the league, wasn't created until 2005. It's 3 years after the ban, and so
it's created by the hunts to get round the ban.
Yeah,
So
like
they're saying,
like enriched cages to get around the ban on barren cages, right? And so
yes,
this is the problem. When you've got people using other animals and oppressing them and exploiting them, they're going to find ways of carrying on doing it.
And of course that made no difference. You know, it's made little difference to the foxes and other animals that that the hunt pursue. It's made little or no difference to the animals they use, such as the dogs and the horses, because those dogs are still going to be killed.
It's the third item that you were pointing out, Ronnie, that in trail hunting, they still use animal-based scents. So, I mean, the first question is, what does that mean and where do they get them from? Whereas in drag hunting, it's non-animal-based scents. So can you kind of tease out for the audience what that kind of means?
Well, I think I think they get the animal-based scents from zoos and places like that, and the animal-based scents, you can make synthetic versions of the animal-based scents, which are the same as the animal-based scents, only they're formulated. You see,
yeah, but they wouldn't be animal-based by then, would they?
They replicate the animal-based, because it's interesting because if we talk about because what's happened, and this article from the Hunt Sabs magazine is talking about the Hunting with Dogs Scotland Act. That's come into force. It came into force on the 3rd of October, so very, very recently. And the actual what it does, one of the main things it does, it bans trail hunting in Scotland. You see, and basically, the law defines trail hunting as an activity where a dog is directed to find and follow an animal-based scent, which has been laid for that purpose, right? But the definition of an animal-based scent isn't just one that's been derived from a wild mammal, but also one which mimics, replicates, or resembles the scent of a wild mammal. So it could be a scent that's kind of been made from artificial ingredients, but is intended to resemble the scent of a wild mammal. So that's included in that's banned as well under this definition of trail hunting that's set out in the new law in Scotland.
Okay, let me see if I've got this right then. So we were talking about drag hunting. The ban came in, and then they invented this thing called trail hunting, and now that was seen as a loophole. And so now, in Scotland at least, that loophole is being filled. What's to stop them coming up with something else?
Well, you see, yes, because you see, they could still use a non-animal-based scent. In other words, for instance, aniseed or something like that dogs will follow. And I think bloodhounds, I think aniseed is one of the things that bloodhounds follow on a trail when they on a drag, because that's drag hunting, because drag hunting is when the scent used is not animal based. You see, so they can still go out with their packs of dogs and follow a scent as long as it's not animal based.
You see, the thing is, Ronnie, I've really not followed this, because when we started talking before we came on air, I thought drag hunting and trail hunting was the same thing. It was just a different word for the same thing, and I didn't realize that it was something invented by the hunt after the ban to get around the ban.
Yeah, you see, drag hunting's been going on for decades and decades, and it's usually done with dogs like bloodhounds, or in fact, I think any scent hound could be trained to follow a drag, to follow a non-animal based scent.
But the thing is, I remember one of the arguments, Ronnie, was that if by using bloodhounds, then you'd in the hunting business, they've got this concept called rioting, which is when essentially the hound pack goes running after another animal that the hunt doesn't want them to go. And so if you've got an animal-based scent in trail hunting that has been set by a human being running with, say, a bag or something behind them, and then a fox passes that, goes over that, well, the hounds are then going to come across the fresher scent of the fox.
Yes. And this was always a problem, even, with fox hunting, even before the law came in, that you'd have, because I think originally foxhounds were dogs that hunted deer way back, and I think that's still, that's still in their DNA. And so there would often be cases of what they called foxhounds rioting after deer, where the hounds would be on a trail of a fox and they'd come across the trail of a deer and they'd pursue the deer instead. You see, and that happened, not really infrequently with fox hunting.
Yeah, and also obviously other animals like cats, for example.
Well, yes, I mean, if they come across, the frequent examples of cats being killed by kind of packs of hounds. But you see, what's kind of interesting is there's this definition on the League Against Cruel Sports of all the differences between drag hunting and trail hunting, right? But the law in Scotland only stipulates one of those things as being trail hunting, and that is the animal-based scent. Right. So the Act bans trail hunting, and it just defines trail hunting as using an animal-based scent or a synthetic version of an animal-based scent. Right. So if they were to use a non-animal-based scent, something like aniseed or another vegetable-derived scent or mineral-derived scent or whatever for the dogs to follow, then it would still be lawful to go out with a pack of hounds.
Yeah. See, some of the problem is if you look at the screen and the bit that we're almost like covering a little bit, it says there drag hunting, scent laid only about 20 minutes earlier. And like you say, they might be using bloodhounds in drag hunting. And then on trail hunting, it says no time limit on how much earlier the scent may be laid before casting the hounds to find the scent. And so if they do it earlier than 20 minutes, it gives more time for a free living being to cross.
Yeah, that's right. So the scent of a fox or another animal would then become stronger than the scent of the trail, and so the dogs are more likely to pursue that animal. You see, whereas you with the drag hunt, but you see, there's nothing in this. There's nothing in this law which says any of that. It just says that the trail hunting is defined as the using of an animal-based scent, or a one that's designed to replicate an animal-based scent. That's all it says. It doesn't say anything about how soon before before the dogs are kind of put out there, the scent has to be.
Are you saying, Ronnie, that if the hunt switched to a non-animal based scent, they're legal again, even with this?
Well, you see, well, basically, it's only as soon as they started pursuing a live animal, it would become unlawful. As soon as they started pursuing a live animal, it would become unlawful. But you see, what this is like, it's an excuse for them to be out there. It's an excuse for them to be out there, you see, because basically this idea of the trail hunting that the hunt brought in was an excuse for them to be out there. In other words, we can still keep our, all our dogs. We can still keep the horses. We'll keep the kennels. We'll keep all the infrastructure of the hunts. And what we'll do is we'll say that we're laying this trail, or will lay a trail. And then we can say to the authorities, we're not after a live animal. The dogs are following a trail, right? But the key thing for the hunt, it gives them a reason, an excuse to be out there. And once they're out there, if it's not enforced, if it's not monitored, then they're going to go off and, and kill a live animal, which is what they've been doing because it hasn't been enforced.
Yeah, and so that's why they
And I
don't.
kind of don't see how. I mean, this act in Scotland has been kind of lauded as a victory by anti-blood sports campaigners, and it does seem that to some extent it kind of is, because in this article from the Hunt Sabs it said that the act has already claimed its first victories after the Lanarkshire and Renfrewshire hunt called it a day after 252 years of hunting. So obviously that hunt thought, oh, it's just too problematic to switch to this kind of drug hunting, because of course the other thing with this and kind of part of this law is that tightens up the law is that they kind of, they can't be going out using the there's very strict stipulations as to when what they call a wild mammal can be killed by dogs. It's very strict, and so just kind of randomly, digging up a fox and killing the fox would be against the law. So the use of terrier workers would be unlawful, certainly in most cases under this law in Scotland. So that kind of, that's another thing that makes it difficult for the hunts. But it's a question of enforcement, I mean, obviously.
Yeah, well, it says that here,
Yeah.
Ronnie. It says the Scottish SAB groups will be watching these hunts like a hawk, and so this is the problem again, isn't it? The fact that hearts and minds are not changed.
Yeah,
they're going to be trying to get around.
The thing is,
this now as well.
What they do, you see, go out there, lay a drag, and say, "Oh well, the hounds are going after this drag. This is why we're going out with a pack of hounds." And then when no one's looking, oh, they've gone after a fox and they've killed a fox. You see, and then also if no one's looking, what's to kind of stop like some terrier man that's hidden away somewhere coming out with a spade and doing stuff? Who's gonna know about it?
There's nothing in the legislation.
And this is where it's important. The SABs are kind of doing the work of the police, really, aren't they?
Well, we always knew that was going to happen, but the point is here is,
and so although it kind of tightened things up a bit, you see, it's kind of.
But is it going to make the hunts use bloodhounds instead?
Well, the thing is, it kind of. The problem is that the dogs that the hunt use is the foxhounds. It's in their DNA to chase other animals, to chase free living beings, isn't it? To chase foxes, to chase deer.
Well,
it's in their DNA.
According to that league document, the hounds are still trained to follow live quarry, whereas in drag hunting they're not.
Yeah, you see, they're trained to follow. So if you put out like an aniseed trail for foxhounds, how interested are they going to be in that? And if they come across like the trail of a live animal, aren't they going to go?
Yeah, so that's why I was asking you: is there anything in the law, as far as you've seen so far, that would?
Well, that would be illegal. You see, that would be unlawful. You see, that would be. But the problem with this, right? It's the same. You see, already under the existing law, right? If the hunt go out and they lay their trail, even if that's like an animal-based scent, and they do all that, right? And then they go out there and they come across a fox and start chasing the fox. That's unlawful. That is unlawful even even according to the existing law before this new law came in, right? That would be unlawful, right? And then it would be unlawful to kind of then use terrier men and all that. All that's unlawful under the existing law. It's just that it's not enforced. You see, that is unlawful. And all this is really doing is like saying that the trail they lay can't be an animal-based scent. So that would mean that
See, it sounds to me like that's going to make it worse, because
Well,
if you've still got hounds trained to follow live quarry, and you're using a non-animal based scent, and then a real free living being crosses it, then
you see,
obviously,
I think this might be why this hunt packed up, because maybe they realised that they thought, well, we can't use a scent that our dogs will follow. So if this law kind of does end up being properly enforced, we're just not going to be able to hunt at all. So we'll pack up, and maybe that's why they packed up.
yeah, maybe they've actually tried to get them on an aniseed scent, and they're not having it or something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe they would follow an aniseed scent. I'm not really sure, but of course, the danger always is that they come across the scent of a fox or even a deer, they'll go after that.
Yeah, but that's why I keep talking about bloodhounds, because that eliminates the problem, isn't
Yeah,
it?
but that isn't. But then they'd have to replace all the foxhounds with bloodhounds, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
And I
that's
suppose
what I'm
it's
asking.
whether
Yeah,
they're prepared to go to that expense. And obviously, this one particular hunt obviously wasn't prepared to do that. But you see, it says also in this part of the article, the 5 foxhounds have now switched to drag hunting. But it's the 5 foxhounds, isn't it? So they're trying to use foxhounds to, to follow a non-animal based scent, aren't they? And
okay. So is that in this article here? Yeah.
yeah, that's in that. That's further down in that Hunt Sabs article.
No, this is the end of it, so it must be further up.
It might be further up, yeah. But you see, the problem I have, with this law, like it looks like I'm not going to deny it is an improvement. I'm not going to deny it is an improvement. And the fact that this particular hunt has closed down, shows that, and that's great. And the fewer hunts there are, the fewer animals are going to be killed. But it's still allowing the hunt to go out there, and that is the danger. If you've got a pack of dogs out in the countryside that have got it in their DNA to, and kind of have been, a lot of those dogs will have been trained as well to hunt live animals, then they're very likely to carry on doing that.
Yeah,
they're very likely to carry on doing that, either like by accident or because that's what the hunt really want to do, and they know that it's not going to be enforced. So what we need, and also, the dogs are still going to be killed, aren't they? The same way, they.
Oh yeah, it doesn't get around the leather, the horses, and the dogs issue.
The dogs and the horses.
No.
The dogs are killed if they're not suitable for hunting when they're young, or when they get a bit older and they slow down, they're killed. They're nearly all killed. How often has anyone seen someone out walking a foxhound? They're very, very, very few of them found. I know 1 or 2 people who've given homes to foxhounds that have somehow been got from the hunt, but it's very, very, very rare. Very rare. And horses. What about when the horses aren't, get older and aren't suitable for being used for hunting? What happens to them?
Yeah.
So you've still got the same problem. You've still got the same problem, even if you ban trail hunting and you've got drag hunting instead. You've still got all those problems still exist. So this is a very, very minor improvement, and it should be seen as such, to be honest. And it's kind of it's a massively long way from giving proper protection to to the animals living in the wild and to the animals that the hunt use.
Yeah. Okay. Well, at least they haven't splashed it with victory, but they do say fox hunting finished in Scotland.
Well, in fox hunting, yeah. Well, well, it was meant to be finished. It's meant to be finished in the UK, in terms that it's actually unlawful in the UK. They're not supposed to go out and actually pursue a fox in the UK. That's all unlawful. They still do it because they're able to get around the law. So and so it's not finished. And really, how much this will finish it'll only really be finished when those hunts have to totally close down, when they have to totally disband, and everything's gone. You
Well,
know, there's no
they're
more dogs.
saying it's possible in the sense that they're saying this act should see the end of hunting
If it
with
makes
dogs.
it so difficult, if it makes it so difficult for hunts to continue, but that depends on enforcement. If
Yeah.
this was like really strictly enforced, it would be really, really difficult for hunts to operate, and you'd see a lot of them closing down because they probably wouldn't really be prepared to switch to drag hunting and all that, you know, in the proper way. But it
Well, I
depends. It very much
suppose.
depends on the enforcement.
Yeah, we'll have to. I mean, obviously, the SABs have said they're gonna monitor them very carefully,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
suppose that's the only thing that they can do. Now,
Yeah.
we're 30 minutes in, and so we ought to move on. I think, Ronnie. So
Yeah, there's another item. I'm staying in the UK just very, very briefly. There's an item in this is from the Welsh government website, and it says from the 17th of October, the use of snares and glue traps will be illegal in Wales. So that's a positive step. But it also says while rodent control is essential where prevention has failed, more humane and targeted methods are available. So they're not talking about not killing these animals, are they? They're talking about, using different methods other than snares and glue traps to kill them.
they're
So
going to run them over at 20 miles an hour.
yes, yeah. But you see, this is the thing that, like, this this is back to the kind of, the whole thing of like, the species that is truly invasive wanting to control the other ones, and the truly invasive species, of course, is the human species, isn't it?
It certainly is.
And of course, we'd argue that the vegan approach to this is where, if there's a problem with any other animal, then what we don't do is kill them. We find other ways of solving that problem. But
We look for other ones.
but
Deb's
that doesn't
asking
say
who's supposed to.
that doesn't say.
Yeah.
I mean, those are particularly snares and glue traps are particularly nasty. So of course it's good they're illegal, but this is kind of this is like a small, you could say this is a small victory, but there's still a long way to go, obviously.
Yeah, well, going back to the hunting thing, Debbie's saying who's supposed to enforce them? Well, obviously, it would be the police.
The police.
But then one of the first things the police said is that we don't have the resources to do that. But that's a lot
Yes.
to do with the kind of jousting that goes on between police forces trying to get money out of the government and all the rest of it.
But it's also on depends on the instructions that come down from the government to the police as to where the police should put their resources. It seems that the police have put an awful lot of resources into controlling protesters and demonstrators, don't they, these days?
They do.
But if your house gets burgled, well, don't bother phoning them. And so this and who it is sets the kind of priorities for the police in Scotland, I don't know. Is that the Scottish Parliament or is it the UK Parliament? I think we've got greater hope if it's the Scottish Parliament, obviously, because the Scottish Parliament have just passed this law. But whether that is or not, I'm not really sure.
Yeah. When you read that bit in blue, you start to get worried, don't you? The first total ban on the use of snares and glue traps in the UK will come into force, blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't mention anything about leg hold traps or other things. So again, are we just going to have some enterprising people just finding loopholes?
Without doubt, yes, without doubt. And so what's really needed is a much deeper change in attitude of humans towards these other animals, isn't it? That's the fundamental solution to this.
Yeah, and I wonder whether, I mean, I haven't followed the debate about this, but I wonder if they've they've kind of sold it on kind of welfare grounds, because I mean glue traps obviously are absolutely horrendous,
Yeah.
and snares are horrendous too. But you know, obviously you've got a whole range of other types of traps, right?
This is a welfare measure, isn't it? It's not to do with rights, because they're not saying that rodents shouldn't be controlled. They're saying that you just can't use these particular methods of killing them.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yes, the use of snares and glue traps are not compatible with high animal welfare standards we strive for here in Wales. Or you're closing down all the slaughterhouses, are you, mate?
Yeah. But it kind of goes to show how these other countries in the UK are more progressive than England. You've got Scotland passing a law concerning hunting, which is stronger than the law that covers England, and now you've got the Welsh government passing a law in Wales that is strong with regard to snares and glue traps, that is also stronger than the law in England. So these, the governments in these countries are more progressive, even though you might say only slightly.
Let's not wave the flag too much, Ronnie. I mean, it's not much, is it?
It's not much, but at least it's something which we haven't got here in England.
Guess so. I guess so. Should we change tack?
Yes, we'll go a little bit further afield now.
We certainly will.
Yeah. We'll go to Lithuania.
We're going to go to Lithuania. Yeah, here we go.
Where the government is proposing to ban fur farming from 2027.
There we go. Let's see if I can.
And they're going to make €1 million available, and a long transition period to allow businesses to prepare and set up other activities, according to the Agriculture Minister.
After years of campaigning,
there's opposition in Parliament, where there's one MP says that it seeks to destroy business in Lithuania, but will achieve nothing. So, and he suggested that fur farming will persist as long as there is demand for pelts. And I suppose in a way, he's kind of, that's sort of true, really, because if you've got a situation where there's people in Lithuania still wanting to wear fur coats, there's no ban on the sale.
Well, there's no need to restrict it to different countries. I mean, it's a global.
Yeah. What's happening is that they'll be imported into Lithuania from somewhere else, and the fur farming will be, Lithuanian people wishing to wear fur will be funding fur farming in another part of the world, won't they? But you see, also, I think the reason why, why has this happened, that we've kind of got this has arisen where this legislation has occurred in Lithuania, and I think it wouldn't have happened without a change in public attitudes. They wouldn't have been able to bring this forward. There's obviously, it's obviously a case in that public opinion in Lithuania has gone more against the wearing of fur, hasn't it? Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible for this to be proposed.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of like, from our point of view, it's a deeply speciesist position, isn't it?
Well, it's one area, isn't it, of the oppression of other animals that they're seeking to regulate, I suppose.
Yeah, but we're back to that thing about if you talk to people about the type of animal use that they're not particularly involved with, compared with the type of animal use they're involved with 3 times a day. Like,
yeah, I mean, this is and this has always been the case. I mean, if you look at the massive, we've just spoken about hunting. Here in the UK, there's been massive opposition to hunting over decades and decades and decades. Public opinion polls, amongst the public, but those people are going to, they're going to immediately go home and eat a ham sandwich, aren't they, or a beef dinner or something, or a fish or whatever they eat, of other animals. So yes, so that's right. Those when people aren't involved in that, yeah, because it's very easy for them to kind of say they don't want it.
Yeah, I think this claim from the group is a little bit problematic from my point of view. This is an extremely cruel treatment of animals for the sake of decoration, for the sake of trinkets, ornaments, pendants, and other nonsense, implying if there's a good reason, right?
Yeah,
And so that
yeah. But you see, basically, it's like kind of these animals are being killed in order to impart some sort of pleasure or perceived pleasure to a human. So I like the look of a fur coat, so all these animals can, suffer and be slaughtered to provide me with that. But that's kind of no different to consuming animal products, because that's just done for pleasure. It's not a necessity. Don't need to consume animal products. So if people are consuming animal products, it's because they're doing so for enjoyment and they're doing so for pleasure. So that is no different to this. It's no different to somebody going to a zoo or to a circus or to animal racing and all these other things that so many people who actually consume animal products are opposed to.
yeah, it's always a problem when you've got a single issue. Is the fact that you do end up getting claims like this, which almost suggests that on moral grounds, this is a little bit worse than the norm and all this kind of stuff. And
It's not. It isn't any worse than consuming animal products. But
but
both
it's implied, isn't it? For the sake
it's
of
implied. It's implied in this, and it can show the kind of how much people are opposed to the fur trade. That a group called the Fur Free European Citizens Initiative, right, has collected 1.5 million signatures urging the EU to actually kind of ban fur totally, ban the ban fur farming and ban the import and sale of fur as well. It's
yeah.
got
Well,
1.5.
on the comments of this thing, I think this might have been Instagram. I think that people are asking, okay, so what's the score in Europe? What's the chance of a Europe-wide thing? And apparently, there's 8 states that are still kind of holding out. Plus the fact there are a couple of states where they're bringing trading in furs back as well.
Yeah, I think one of them's Denmark. I think Denmark suspended fur farming because of COVID. They had, I think, didn't they? Weren't like thousands of mink, weren't they killed in Denmark because of they were in?
Yeah, there was some places where they found that COVID was being transferred between humans to mink and then back again and all that kind of stuff. So there is a problem. But obviously Denmark brings us to Michael Koboldick, doesn't it? Because in that article, I didn't see any mention of compensations. So let's have a quick look at this. I think it might be a little bit quiet, but hopefully it'll play okay.
Sensing that the end for fur farming in Britain was near, Michael Koboldick bought another farm in Denmark, where he breeds 45,000 mink a year. Now the ban is in place, he is considering rearing and killing his mink there and sending the pelts back to Britain to be prepared for sale.
All it does is actually stop me raising mink here on site. It doesn't stop me processing mink, it doesn't stop me selling mink from this site.
The British fur farmers are negotiating compensation from the government for the loss of their industry. Michael Koboldick is demanding £6 million.
Obviously, if the government have to pay us and that, we're going to be using that money to expand our Danish operation. I mean, I shall make sure that happens.
So in effect, the British government will be paying you and you will be expanding mink production somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, the government's taking me into Europe, basically, and expanding my operation.
Yeah, that guy has got such cold, horrible, bloody eyes.
Absolutely. Yeah. But this is the problem. And you see, there's only and one of the problems, it's not the only problem, but one of the problems is that although fur farming is banned in, I think it says here in this article that fur farming has been banned in 19 European countries, 14 of which are EU member states, and of course one of those countries, one of those states, obviously not now in the EU, is the UK, or England and Wales anyway, were the first European countries to enforce a ban on fur farming in 2003. But of course, the import and sale of fur is not banned in the UK, I don't think it's banned in any of the other countries in Europe. It remains legal across Europe in general, and so that's a problem, because even if you've got other countries in the world, not in Europe, for instance, China is a huge fur farming nation, and so if the import and sale of fur isn't banned in the EU and other European states, then it's perfectly open for the fur to be imported and from China, say, or other countries where it's not unlawful. And what will result there is that the fur farming in those countries will just expand because of the increased demand from those other countries. So you're kind of sort of pushing them around, aren't you?
Nobody gets saved. It just gets moved around like pawns on a chessboard. But going back to Cobbledick, right? He goes from Britain, where he gets several £million, to Denmark. Then they got closed down, as you just said, to do with COVID. But they got compensated because of that. So he's been compensated twice now. And now they've sorted it all out, and some people have suggested that they were a little bit hasty and all that, and so they're bringing it back so he can start up again, and then that will mean that there'll be another campaign against fur farming in Denmark, and if that wins, that means this guy is going to be compensated a third time, right? And so this is always a problem with these things. Even if you get compensated once, you become a multimillionaire, right? And of course, the question that is always asked then is, well, if you've got people who run fur farms and, involved in the fur business, which the campaigners always call animal abusers and all that kind of stuff, and you make them multimillionaires, well, what are they going to do with the money?
Well, that's right. It's, it's either going to be invested in fur farming elsewhere, or there's a very strong chance it's going to be put into some other form of animal exploitation. But I think the answer is not to compensate these buggers, isn't it? Really, that's the answer.
But you can't do that, because the way that Cobbledick got compensated is he went to the European Court of Human Rights. So, I mean, the irony of it, right? That somebody who violates other animals' rights goes to the European Court of Human Rights in order to get compensation for being stopped for violating other animals' rights.
Yeah, that's right. But I kind of tend to think that what has to be really dealt with in order to kind of properly solve this problem is the demand, isn't it? As long as there's a demand, there's going to be a supply from somewhere.
Well, that's what they said. That's what you read out before, wasn't it?
That's exactly what that guy.
Yeah, so long as there's demand,
the Parliament said. You see, now that can be
this one here. Right?
That could be dealt with by the import of, say for instance, if you just take the UK, where we've got a ban on fur farming, fur can still be imported and sold. Okay, so you ban the import and sale of fur into the UK. Now that may make a difference in terms of people not buying fur here anymore because they just can't get hold of it. All right, you could say, well, there could be a black market, but I nevertheless think that would still restrict the sale. But then the question arises, I suppose, so what are they going to wear instead of the fur? Are they going to wear some other type of animal product instead of the fur? You see, so you've got all these complications in terms of really proclaiming these things to actually be a victory.
Yeah, well, we're back to the fact that, I mean, we do know, and activists have said this, and it's fair enough. I think it's true that they've said that we kind of need to have victories every now and again. And so, in that sense, it's kind of like, can't we just see that as a necessary part of the campaigning process, that some campaigners need to have these kind of victories in order for them not to burn out and not to just leave and all that. And so if the choice is between getting this kind of stuff or leaving, then this is better, presumably, than that, right? If we try and look at it that way, if you like.
I mean, I think that can be argued, but I think really that, kind of, I think, like, in terms of discussion these things, it's not to just kind of really pour cold water over everything and say, yeah, but you might as well not have bothered and this doesn't mean anything. I don't think that's not really my position. My position on these things is, these these different bits of legislation, I think it can be argued that they will spare, or they will have spared, some other animals from suffering and slaughter. I think we can say that, but it's only very, very small, compared to the totality. And so if we really want to change things big time, in a big way, the answer to that really has to be vegan education, because we have to change the attitudes of people, so people are opposed to the exploitation and the oppression of other animals for any reason, so that
last I heard, vegans don't buy fur. I mean, I don't even think
vegans don't buy fur, and vegans don't buy animal products or support any of these industries. And then also vegans can have, like, influence in terms politically, in terms of actually, like, passing legislation that will properly ensure that ensure that animals aren't oppressed and exploited. Because I think in the end there has to be something in terms of legislation, because otherwise the only solution is to educate every single person to become vegan. And I don't, in terms, truly vegan in terms of the philosophy, believing in animal liberation. And I think that's kind of, I don't see that really as being achievable nor necessary. I think we just have to educate enough people so that we're the ones in charge and we call the shots. And any legislation that we pass can be kind of truly effective in doing something to stop all this.
Yeah, well, you said that thing about pouring cold water, but that's the issue. Oh, so what are you saying to these people, that they're wasting their time, or they have wasted their time? They could have been doing something.
You see, I think in terms of, I think if the question's asked about all these things, have animals, other animals, been spared, or will they be spared because of this these various forms of legislation? And I think the answer to that, it's very difficult to say that they kind of won't be. I mean, we've already seen the case it looks like this new law in Scotland has caused the hunt to close down, may cause other ones to close down. That's less fox hunting, isn't it? That's fewer animals being pursued and killed. And I think all these things that I think they will have some positive effects, but I think that positive effect is probably a lot less than many people think. And that if we really want to have a big effect, the only way that we will do that is through vegan education that deals with.
Okay, let me ask you a difficult question, Ronnie,
Yeah.
because this is going back to the Lithuania thing. This is the post. You'll see there it's had 1,500 likes, and most of the comments were "Yay, victory, brilliant!" Thank goodness, and all the rest of it. There is no analysis, and of course, the people announcing the victory are not telling anybody that, well, this is not actually going to do much or anything. They're not also saying, by the way, the drag is that now the fur farmers are going to be multi-million. They don't say that, right? And so
No,
I just wonder whether we don't have a sophisticated enough movement to be able to think our way through these issues and then say, okay, so that's the headline. This is the headline, but what does that mean?
Well, yes. I mean, it's there's these issues are kind of aren't simple, and there's a lot of complications involved and a lot of twists and turns, and it's not as clear cut as it appears in terms of animals being spared. And so I think we've got to my position is that whatever people do and however people campaign and whether or not people are getting involved in these campaigns to kind of ban all these different things here and now, that if we're still living in a speciesist society, if we're still living in a society that isn't where we're not the ones in control, it's not a vegan run society, then what we're going to achieve is only going to be very, very tiny in terms of the overall oppression and exploitation of other animals. And so whatever campaigns people are embarking on, unless we have sufficient people involved in vegan education, involved in vegan outreach, we're never going to get very far. And to me, that's the bottom line. And that's what people need to think about.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. If you would expect that thousands of vegans would not support something that makes things worse. Now, I've been talking about fur farming bans for years after researching them and finding out, to my kind of shock, that they not only don't really work, that they actually make things worse. And so this is how it works. So you've got no one gets saved because, as you said, the other animals then get moved somewhere else. And that somewhere else, traditionally in the last 20 years or so, has been Russia or China. And the people campaigning against the fur farming have pointed out themselves that they have got no animal welfare legislation. Now, there's a caveat to that. Does it make any difference whether they have or not? Because, as we know, animal welfare legislation doesn't do a lot. But they're the ones who have complained that these companies have not had any welfare things, and yet that is the country that they've now sent these minks to. And then the third problem is the fact that now you've got these multimillionaire ex-fur farmers running around the world investing in God knows what, right? And presumably we're speculating it's not going to be a tofu farm, right? And so therefore, even if it's true that there's been somewhere along the line some improvement here, it's kind of countered by all the kind of negatives that go along with this particular. I mean, this particular type of campaigning. has always been incredibly problematic, and yet it's very difficult to say it in the movement without getting criticised as being,
yes. I mean, we have the same all over the place. I mean, if you look at campaigns, you look at a lot of the anti-vivisection campaigns. You look at, say, something that's very prominent over here, say Camp Beagle, the campaign to close MBR Acres, the Beagle supply in place. The reality is, though, if that place were closed and nothing is done in terms of limiting animal experimentation, that all that's going to happen is that the laboratories are going to get beagles from elsewhere, aren't they? And then if for any reason they're not allowed to experiment on beagles, they'll experiment on some other sort of animal instead. So, that's a similar thing where it's pushing the problem around really rather than solving it, unless unless some sort of action is taken or campaign is embarked on that's going to actually reduce the amount of animal experimentation. Then closing these breeding places down makes no difference, or even kind of closing laboratories down would make no difference, because all that would happen is that one laboratory's loss. The campaign against Huntington Life Sciences, the very famous shack campaign, which was eventually crushed by the state here. Had that succeeded, what would actually have happened if that had succeeded? Well, what would have happened is all the companies that were paying Huntington Life Sciences to test their products would have just paid some other animal research laboratory to test their products. That's the reality of what would have happened had that closed. So
yeah, but the movement issue there, Ronnie, is we couldn't exactly get away with trotting along to Camp Beagle and saying this is a waste of time.
You see, my attitude towards something like Camp Beagle is the positive side of it is the awareness raising. The positive side of it is it's making members of the public aware of animal experimentation. Whereas I think, there are, a lot of members of the public that think that experiments on animals were done away with years ago. That's been, what people have said to me many times recently. I didn't know it still went on, because there's been so little publicity about it over, sort of recent years. So I think in terms of awareness raising, there is a positive aspect there, because, we have to change the attitudes of ordinary people if we're ever going to kind of get any change, because it's ordinary people who are the consumers, isn't it? And it's ordinary people who are the voters.
Well, you mentioned voting, so maybe we should turn to.
Yes, that leads us into the next article, doesn't it?
Do you want to show the film first, Ronnie?
I think it might be an idea to. I think that might be an idea to kind of. I think the film kind of leads on from the article in a way. So I think if we kind of
you want the article.
Do the article first.
Okay, right. So hang on, give us a second. The Green Magnet. That sounds like a superhero, doesn't it?
Any magnates, not a magnet, not a kind of thing that attracts iron.
The superhero.
Yeah, well, Dale Vince, who's vegan, he runs the energy company Ecotricity, green energy company, and he, for quite some while, he was quite substantially funding Just Stop Oil, who are the kind of group that's, uses disruptive measures to draw attention. They want no new production of fossil fuels. Basically, that's kind of what they're campaigning for. And they're kind of hit the headlines with disrupting sporting events, haven't they? And they disrupted Les Miserables, didn't they? The play or whatever it is. Is it an opera play or something? Or they disrupted that.
Right, I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and they do this slow walking where they hold up the traffic, and the motorists get very annoyed and all this.
Les Miserables. Yeah, I know.
Les Miserables. Yeah. And like Dale Vince, he's been funding them, but he's decided to stop funding them. And
Go into
it
politics.
says that he funded the group to some hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Yeah, some hundreds of thousands. Yeah.
But he stopped funding them because it wants to funnel money towards getting the vote out for Labour at the next general election.
Oh yeah.
And he's saying that
what do you think that's going to do?
Well, he says that if the Tories get into power again, they're going to, continue with all these measures that are harmful to the, to the climate, abandon net zero, open new coal mines and oil fields, for instance. And so
and Labour are going to be better than that.
Them out. Well, he kind of says Labour is green, Tories are not. Right, this is what he's saying. Right.
Okay. Well, Ronnie,
I vote for anyone other than Labour. No, sorry.
I mean, we saw this today, right? So this is the Labour Party saying that they're not opposed to shooting, right? Is that green?
Well, it's kind of not because, I mean, it's certainly not sustainable. The guy talks about supporting sustainable shooting in this Labour guy. I think this is something that happened at the Labour conference, wasn't it? But I mean, it's not this. I don't know how sustainable shooting is carried out.
Shadow environmental secretary.
The shadow environmental secretary. This is who we're going to get, the guy that supports shooting. But of course, all the Tories support shooting. So let's not think that they're any better than him.
No, but I mean, this is just a thing.
But he's not any better than them, and of course, shooting is certainly not sustainable for the individual animals who are shot, and also it's extremely harmful to the to the natural world. The number of animals that have to be killed to sustain
the burning of the grouse moors, for example.
Yeah, right? and loads of stuff. It's sort of really unfriendly to the environment, apart from the killing of the animals that are shot. So this idea that Labour is green, a vote for anyone other than Labour or no vote at all is a vote for another Tory government, right? And then he kind of goes on to talk about. Labour has said that if elected, it would grant no new licenses for oil and gas projects, and begin a programme of retrofit insulation for 19 million homes, which was a key demand of another activist group. There was another group that used to do a lot of disruption. They seem to have stopped now. A group called Insulate Britain. Remember a little while back?
Oh yeah, I've heard that name. Yeah.
Now the thing is this. I think it's kind of. It's I mean, my position on this is kind of quite nuanced, really. He kind of
there's no point then, is there? Because nobody will understand it.
Nobody understands that. You see, he's kind of saying that what Just Stop Oil have been doing in terms of disruption hasn't worked. It's made no difference to the government, and in fact, the government have got worse. They've got worse in terms of, their support for the fossil fuel industry, and that's actually true. You see, and he says here that under the current government, protests cannot work, and that he would go so far as to say that anything that could feed the Tories' culture war narrative is counterproductive. So he says that as well, which is why now I kind of, to a certain extent, I sympathize with him and I understand where he's going, right? It does seem that the disruptive tactics have done nothing to change the attitude of the governments. And you see what we had following all this disruption by first of all, Extinction Rebellion, and then mainly now from Just Stop Oil. What's happened is far from taking any notice of what these groups want, the government has actually moved in the opposite direction. That's the first thing. And secondly, it's enabled the government to bring in even harsher laws to curtail protest. So it's it seems, certainly in the short term, to have the opposite effect to what it intended. And I think the problem is that if you've got, and this idea, the kind of whole premise on which this disruptive action is kind of based, I think is kind of not totally solid. I mean, these groups talk about, the suffragettes caused disruption and they got what they want, and the civil rights movement in America caused disruption and they got what they want, But there's been many examples of protest and disruption that hasn't achieved what it wanted. I mean, a big example is like CND, Committee of 100 that part of CND and took disruptive action to try to persuade the UK to abandon nuclear weapons. Well, that failed very sadly, abysmally, and that campaign's ended many years ago, and we've still got nuclear weapons, and not all that long ago, the vote in Parliament to renew and update the nuclear weapons, the Trident that the UK has. And then you've got other examples of like, how many million people, was it 2 million people marched against Britain's involvement in the Iraq war? All that that didn't work, did it? So there's loads of examples of disruption and protest not succeeding, as well as the ones that they claim are examples of it being successful. You see, so it's kind of not, it's not as clear cut as these people claim. And at the moment, I mean, you could say, well, it may have some long-term effect in raising awareness, raising consciousness, amongst the public of, the problem, the climate crisis.
Yeah, but the irony there, Ronnie, is that's not the aim of them, though, is it? That's not what they're focused on systems, aren't they? Not the public.
They're actually focused on, somehow exerting pressure for the government. But the problem is, if you're, they're up against a government that's got like an entrenched ideology, very hardline right-wing, anti-green ideology, right? And so they're kind of like, they're kind of trying to move an immovable object, right? So it obviously seems the answer to me then is to can we change the object to another object that might be easier to move, and it's not true that it isn't true that Labour are green. They're far from green. They're pro growth. One thing we don't want is economic growth. We need degrowth. Less impact on the natural world. Less, less, resources, being taken from nature. We have to, massively cut down on production and consumption of things. But Labour aren't for that. They're for like, let's increase this mantra of increasing economic growth all the time. Well, Labour are all for that. So they're not. Labour aren't green. It's just that they're, they're the kind of what you might call the moderate wing of the Tory party. I don't consider they're not a left wing party. I consider them a right wing party.
Well, we've got that problem though, Ronnie. That that left wing parties don't get elected, and we know with Blair, you have to be light blue to get elected, right?
Yeah, well, the only way they'll get elected is if we educate people to think and vote differently. That's the only way they'll get elected. But you're kind of, but I think the difficulty is that you're, Labour are the moderate wing of the Tory party, I say, but at least they're the moderate wing and not the extreme hard line right wing of the Tory party. So if I've got a choice of having,
you reckon you could get a cigarette paper between the two, do you?
Well, I think. Well, I think there is a difference. I think there is a difference. It's just that it's kind of, it's like, who do you want, Trump or Biden? Well, Biden's not great in loads of ways, but he's not Trump, is he? So I'd rather have Trump than Biden. Sorry, the other way around. I'd rather have Biden than Trump. And I'm pleased.
Oh, you
Biden
heard it here
was
first, people.
Trump.
Right? Okay.
And it's the same with this. It's to say, if that's the choice that you've got, if that's the only realistic choice that you've got,
that is the choice at the moment, isn't it? Because
it is the choice. But
yeah,
you see,
I mean, I don't follow British politics.
no, that is the choice.
But
You see, the reality is that if you're
so
not
what
going to
about
have
the
the
Greens,
Tories,
though, Ronnie? I mean,
Yeah.
Joanne says here, vote Green.
But
Now, you've
well,
been
you
involved
see,
with the Greens, right?
What I'd say is this: is that you see, he says here, Dale Vince says, a vote for anyone other than Labour or no vote at all is a vote for another Tory government. Well, I certainly agree with him that no vote at all is a vote for another Tory government, because most people that don't vote, their interests aren't with the Tories. You know, the mostly poorer people whose interests would be in a left-wing government or a more left-wing government. But a vote for anyone other than Labour, you see, that isn't actually true, because in many constituencies, the candidate best placed to defeat the Tories is not a Labour candidate. You know, there are many constituencies where the candidate that's best placed to defeat the Tory candidate would be a Liberal Democrat candidate, and there are some constituencies where that person would be a Green. Not very many. The Greens are actually targeting 4 seats. They're just targeting 4 seats at the election where they think they've got a chance of winning. And so, isn't the best way to get the Tories out isn't necessary to vote Labour. The best way to get the Tories out is to vote for the person in your constituency who has the best chance of defeating the Tory. I mean, providing they're not more right wing than the Tory, of course, which is unlikely now that we don't have UKIP anymore. So that's how you get the Tory. Isn't a blanket vote for Labour is not the way to defeat them, you know. But I think we have to start by getting the Tories out, definitely, and that's kind of, and it's not like the only way where we're really going to get a decent government in this country is through vegan education. You know, so we change the culture, increase the number of vegans, increase the number of vegan politicians. There's more vegans to vote for the vegan politicians, and we have, eventually have a government where run by vegans. That's what we need. And the only way you get that is through in massively increasing vegan outreach and for as many vegans as possible to be involved in it. Yeah, that's the only way we really change politics.
Yeah,
but the thing is,
we're about to show a film which basically
says and this is
it's not possible, right? To get the change that you want. That's what's being said in this film.
Well, yeah. I mean, play it because this is very interesting.
Man of the people, Rishi Sunak, doesn't even know how to fill up his own car, doesn't even seem to know how to use a credit card, who treats the entire nation as a flyover state as he flips from one place to another in his helicopter, who travels between his multiple homes, including one that he keeps in London solely for guests to stay in. This is an immensely privileged man, the richest man in Parliament, who claims that he's pursuing his policies for the sake of the working man and woman, the man and woman in the street. That's why I'm against ULEZ, the ultra-low emission zones. That's why I'm against all these other green measures, even 20-mile-an-hour zones, solely for the sake of you, the ordinary person who I emote with and connect with so strongly from 1,000 foot up in my helicopter.
Can I just check? This is very glitchy for me. Is it running okay for you?
It is for me as well. I don't know whether it is for people.
Maybe people in the chat. Is it running okay for you, or is it a little bit sticky? Because this is. We thought we might have a bit of because I've had so many kind of things going on that I thought we might have.
This is George Monbiot, obviously, who we've featured quite a few times before on our show.
Can people in the chat just say if that was playing all right or not?
Yeah.
I'll put it on again. Well, we will start now. That's good.
It's choppy, yeah. I mean, we could basically talk through the rest of what he said, because the kind of he was basically saying that the media moguls kind of are controlling what the politicians say, and that none of them want to, you know, obviously Rishi Sunak doesn't want to offend them, but neither does Keir Starmer. And
Well,
so
he calls Starmer a coward, doesn't he?
And so Starmer isn't going to make any of the really radical changes that we need to combat the climate crisis, for instance. Starmer isn't going to do that either, and that's absolutely and that's absolutely and totally true. And George Monbiot is absolutely right in saying that, and I totally agree with him. So we do need, you know, the Tories aren't the answer. Labour's not the answer either. And we need a totally different sort of, you know, massively more radical politics in terms of protecting the planet, in terms of social justice, in terms of, you know, bringing liberation for other animals. And the only way we're going to get that is through vegan education, I've said already. The only way to do that is through vegan. We're not going to get that through really like any of the existing parties, certainly as they are now. And the only party that, I mean, it was interesting that Joanna mentioned the Green Party. The only party I see as offering any hope is the Green Party, but even they would have to be radically changed. That they would have to be radically veganized in order to. The Green Party's got excellent policies, some really good policies on the environment, and they've got, you know, very good policies on protecting other animals as well. I mean, one of their policies is to end animal farming, you know, phase out animal farming, for instance, move the nation to a plant-based agricultural system. You know, that's their policy. It's everything that, you know, these campaigners like Animal Rebellion were asking for and all that. You know, that's the Green Party policy. But you kind of wouldn't know. They don't give it any priority. They don't give it any emphasis, because they're still like a human-centric, human supremacist party.
Well, maybe if they made it more clear, they'd probably get even less votes, Ronnie.
Well, possibly so, but that's down to lack of education. The reason that, you know, the only way they'd get more votes for policies like that is if we educate people, and we educate more people to become vegan, and then more people would support those policies, and then, you know, we could have you know.
Yeah, so we're back to vegan education, because
everything's back to vegan education, and the only thing, the only reason, I mean, I will, in my constituency here, at the last general election, I voted Labour because I saw that the Labour candidate was the one that had the best chance of defeating the Tory. I mean, he didn't, and, you know, the Tory won by a massive majority. And you know, my position is, you know, and what I kind of advocate locally is that there's a progressive alliance of all the other parties that all come together, field one candidate and defeat the Tory. That's the only chance there is of defeating him. You know, I'd like to see that everywhere, because I think that's, at the moment, that's the, you know, and I think that Dale Vince is right that, you know, that we need to get the Tories out. I think I don't think supporting Labour across the board is the way to get the Tories out. I think you've got to, it depends on the constituency as to who you support.
Yeah, but the point is, there's no point in replacing the Tories with something that's almost like a carbon copy, though, either, is it?
Well, the thing is, though, that you can't. The reason is you can do both, can't you? You know, I can kind of go down the, you know, take 10 minutes to go down the polling station, put a cross on a piece of paper, or now I don't even do that because I get a postal vote. You know, it takes a few seconds to do that, right? And there we go. I voted for, you know, the lesser of two evils, right? and that's only taken me a fraction of my time, and the rest of my time I'm going to be promoting veganism, so that in the long run we completely, change the system, and get a government that's going to really do some good. So you can do both.
Well,
It isn't either or. It's not an
let's
either or.
let's go back to Monbiot, because he says that the Tories and Labour have brought, are talking about things which are probably very deleterious to the environment.
Yes.
And yet they're supported by the richest people in the world, he's saying, and also the poorest people in the world are voting for them.
Yes. Yeah, because people are because they're con people. Because when you think of the newspapers, you know what newspapers do people read? Poor people read. Many of the newspapers that poor people read, or poorer people read, are owned by, these, media tycoons who are, who support the Tories, and it's in their interest to support the Tories. And so, of course, they're going to spread their propaganda to poorer people through their newspapers to vote for the Tories, aren't they? That's what happens. And the only way we counter that is to our own to our own information. I mean, they've got the money. All these people.
Ronnie, just a second. I mean, I know, I agree with you. Obviously, that's what we need. But if you look at the kind of shit show that's going on in Britain, if you look at the shit show that's going on in North America, which is what Debbie is pointing out, and the fact that you get these terrible people being, elected all the time, and then you've got people in the vegan movement currently saying that veganism has got nothing to do with politics. I mean, like I'm less optimistic about veganism now than I have been for a long time, I think, because everything just seems to be going down the pan as far as I can see.
Well, I think all we can do is is keep fighting for it not to go down the pan, isn't it? That's kind of all we can do. And yes, I mean, there, in various ways, there are kind of worrying trends within people who consider themselves to be vegan, shall we say? But all we can do is keep on keeping on and keep on, putting out the message we're putting out and hoping enough people would take notice. There isn't anything more we can do, really, as well as the practical side of like helping and encouraging people to do outreach and doing outreach ourselves, of course, because that's the fundamental, that's the fun. All you're doing at the moment, once if the Tories are voted out here, which I kind of hope they will be, then all we'll have then is the lesser of two evils. We won't have anywhere near. We'll still be light years away from what we really want. And the only way to get what we really want is to educate far more people to be vegan.
Yeah, and then you've got obviously the eternal problem, which Steve Best pointed out in his Total Liberation talk, is that even when you're talking about people on the left, they are also deeply speciesist. And there's a lot of stuff going around in social media now about if you talk to left progressives, they suddenly turn into Donald Trump when you talk about O'Donnell.
Well, it's like I said before, that you get someone like, if you're talking about like gay rights, you're talking about women's rights, talking about the rights of people of color, you're talking about the rights of people with disabilities, you're talking about workers' rights. These people would be right on, like progressive radical lefties. When starting to talk about animal rights, they become hardline Nazis. No.
Yeah. Well, Deb, on this one, I agree totally with this. If it does go down the drain, I want to be one of the ones who.
Well,
I'm not giving up or anything. I'm just not.
I think that's
very optimistic.
I think that's all we can do. You can't just go for it and see what happens. And we don't know. I mean, it kind of takes me back. It really kind of takes me back to when we kind of started the Band of Mercy, which there was a precursor to the ALF, and we're all huddled together in 6 of us, and we're huddled together in a basement cafe in London discussing our plans. And someone said, "How do you think this is gonna? What do you think is gonna happen?" we start this direct action, and we didn't know. We said, well, we don't know. We don't know kind of how it's going to pan out, but we know we need to do it, so we'll just do it and then see what happens, and kind of we did, and for a considerable amount of time, it achieved a lot of success. Of course, it was never going to achieve animal liberation, of course, in terms of widespread culture change or anything like that, but it achieved considerable success and was a lot more than we ever envisaged. And I think it's I feel very much the same really about vegan outreach, promoting vegan outreach, that we don't know the result of our efforts going to be, but we just have to go for it and just see what happens, because it's the only
I agree with all that, of course.
Yeah.
Ronnie. I mean, I suppose looking at the news that has come to prominence over the last week or so, it's not as though it's only just started, but it's only just got the kind of coverage that it's got for various reasons. It just goes to show how violent we are as a species. And when there's talk of thousands of rockets landing here, there, and everywhere, I always think, well, somebody's had to make them and trade them, and there's been an arms dealer selling them, and governments buying them and transporting them around the world. We couldn't do that with the issue of peace and justice, but we can with arms. I mean, we can't even feed everyone on this planet, but we can make sure everybody's armed to the teeth.
I know. I know, it's crazy, and that the fundamental solution to all of this is veganism. The fundamental solution is veganism, according to the real and true definition of what veganism is.
Yeah, well, I posted a meme yesterday I think it was. I was saying veganism, the ultimate peace movement, and of course it is. But
yes,
it's kind of like, whoa, talk about Samson and no, it's not that one. It's the other one, the slingshot guy. What's that one? The
David and Goliath.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. It kind of is. But you see, also the other thing, what we need to remember is whenever there's an armed conflict with rockets flying about, I mean, it's appalling that all these humans are being killed, whatever side they're on, so to speak. But how many other animals are being killed? How many other animals are being killed by all these rockets and things? It's probably more than the humans. I always think that the main victims.
There's one side at the moment calling the other side human animals, which
yes,
from a vegan point of view is deeply ironic, but they don't mean it in an ironic way.
See, of course, we've got this kind of insane species that kind of can't just. We can't live in harmony with one another. We always have to be trying fighting and killing and shit, and that that's bad enough. But the main impact of that is on these other animals that are nothing to do with it. They're just getting on with their life, aren't they? And you've got these lunatic species, really, and I, we have to bring, veganism is the ultimate form of kind of sanity in a way, isn't it? And rationality, to be honest, that we've got to keep promoting.
Okay, well, we've done our 90 minutes. So to end on the positive note, Ronnie, over to you.
Well, I think the answer to all this, we've covered a few issues today, but the answer comes down to the the same thing, that what we're kind of looking at, there's a common theme that runs through all these things. I mean, including the Dale Vince article and discussion about Labour and the Tories and stuff like that, is that what we're talking about are things that, if they have made any improvements for other animals or for the world in general, it's only been very, very minor, and that kind of flows through the whole thing. And if we want to have real big change, if we really want to have the a society where we really have animal liberation and really have social justice, then the answer to that is vegan education. And so we need far more vegans to be involved in that. We need that as many places as possible, as much as possible. And that's the only way that we're going to get any more than very, very slight, possibly minor improvements to things.
Well, to quote from a film, I knew you'd say that.
Well, I'm hoping if I say it enough times, someone might take notice of it, to be quite honest.
Yeah. Well,
I'll just record the next edition and just not bother.
we could just have a hologram of you for this end bit.
I could
we?
do, really, yeah. But
Yeah.
of course, it can't ever be said often enough, can it? It can't ever be said often enough that, to me, sometimes there's all this noise going on. There's all this noise, in what we might consider the movement, in the vegan community or whatever, animal rights community. There's all this noise about, different forms of campaigning, people doing different things, and yet there's one clear, in the middle of all that, there's one clear truth, isn't there? One clear truth. It's like a small voice saying that here's the way forward. Look, this is the way forward. It's vegan education. And it's like, amongst all that noise, how many people are going to actually listen to that voice?
Well, history says not many. For example, right the way back in the 80s and certainly into the early 90s, mid 90s, one of the Garys, what mentioned the name, did exactly that, and saying, look, if we put all our effort as a movement into this, and of course it was condemned as not workable, it's not businesslike, it's not gonna keep our jobs, blah 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 blah, and it never happened. And we're not much further on from that, really, if you think of it that way, sadly.
Well, yes, I mean, I think that's true. But what do? We just have to keep on keeping on as we.
What we do is we carry on doing shows, and we'll do one. We got an announcement, haven't we? We think we're probably going to start doing these every fortnight, Ronnie. Is that right?
Yes, I suppose we've got to decide yet whether we're going to do one next week. But kind of, we're both very busy with all other stuff and things, aren't we, as well? And so we were thinking about, maybe doing a show every fortnight instead of every week. But we kind of you'll know before the next show what we've kind of actually decided.
Yeah, and of course that all depends on whether, Ronnie, we are
still alive.